Hey viewers, what's going on? Welcome to Scramble Spirits on the arcade, brought to you by GameAnyone.com. So Scramble Spirits is a generic, by now, right? Generic vertical shooter, shoot 'em up, developed by Sega in 1988. This belongs to the System 24 hardware, which provided 24-bit graphics, which was the shit, of course, for the time. For late 80s, to be more specific. There are quite a few games that belong to this hardware and have that special characteristic of playing games with enhanced graphics, which are easily compared to the Super Nintendo in some cases at least. The gameplay itself is quite simple in terms of how to shoot stuff, but this game is extremely unforgiving. I'm gonna tell you why. This game, I'm sorry about that, this game has a feature which is not really common during the 90s when it came to playing shoot 'em ups, which consist of having side ships as your power-ups, the only power-ups you can ever get during the game, and unfortunately they disappear once you die, and you can get them once in a while, probably once or twice every level, unlike most of the shooters during the 90s, for example. And the other unfortunate thing, and probably what makes this game really complicated to pass through, is the fact you destroy 80% of the enemies using your missile, your ground missile, instead of using your sky missile, your normal bullets, if you will. 80% of the time the enemies are on the ground or on the sea, in case of a battleship, for example, instead of air enemies, which should be the complete opposite, at least in a very generic shooter. This is still generic in terms of how it looks like and how it plays, but it's still more complicated because, I insist, most of the enemies are on the ground or on the sea. Even the bosses have their weak points on lower parts. That's why you have to use this missile. Now I'm using rapid fire, so I'm able to shoot up to 4 of those missiles, but all of them go to the very same position, so it is very complicated to destroy a lot of those tanks or a lot of those stationary shooters or battleships as you are avoiding those missiles they shoot at you. So it's really complicated. If they're moving all the time, it is even more complicated. The aiming here is very precise. You have to be at a very specific position for you to destroy those enemies on the ground or the sea. So least of the time you use your sky shooter, a typical bullet shooter you have, and which is supposed to be, I mean, looks like the most effective one when it comes to destroying enemies. So in that sense the game is really unfair and unforgiving. Sounds like a lame excuse, I know that, but well, in general terms I suck at these shoot 'em ups. This boss, for example, requires to use your lower missile in order to kill them. You use the same button for shooting both, that's why you can see both of these attacks being performed at the same time. Now the thing is, you shoot more of the sky missiles, more often at least, and they look, or they seem to be more effective than the ground ones. So it doesn't make any sense, or at least that makes this game even more difficult. And unfortunately, this game doesn't have the bond feature, which could help you to destroy a lot of enemies at the same time. That became very common, for example, during the 90s with games such as Aero Fighters. But I remember there were even previous releases, previous games, previous shoot 'em ups during the 80s which had that feature. For example, 1942, 1943, that came out before this, and Ajax by Konami, that came out before this too, a year before at least, also had the bond feature, but this one didn't have it. As a sort of compensation, if you will, at least Sega provided this continuation feature for this. Remember, the continuation feature is the idea or the possibility of reviving in the very same place where you got killed immediately after you got killed by a missile or another ship. I remember most of the shooters of the time didn't have continuation feature, but instead they had checkpoints, or just straight you had to begun or start from the very beginning of the level once you die, which is of course very sucky, shitty and gay. But at least Sega tried to compensate the difficult gameplay this provides with continuation features, as you can see. Of course, I'm using infinite lives and rapid fire in order to make this a little bit more, less complicated. But even so, I'm gonna share you. Well, you already saw a lot of deaths already, but there are a lot more to come. Trust me. This is another example of a boss that requires only the lower missiles in order to get them killed. The other one, even if I shoot it all the time and very precisely, I need the other missiles instead, which I insist I find it unfair. But with the bomb feature, for example, in games such as Age of Fighters, which in my opinion set a standard, other series such as, I don't know, Battle Garega or Strikers 1945 or Gunbird, all of those games were pretty much the same thing in terms of that standard I was telling you about. You can grab different power-ups as you are destroying big ships. The more power-ups, the more courage on screen you have when you are shooting. You get a shitload of bombs, you get speed up. This one also has very special difficulty yeah, it is actually harder because of this slow speed you have, especially when you are going back or moving to the sides. It's really slow when you are going to the sides, as you can see. So yeah, it is actually very complicated in all the senses, not only for killing enemies, for destroying enemies that most of the time stay on the ground, I insist with this idea, but also your own speed is very shitty, especially when you have to avoid missiles or any other attack in terms of projectiles from other enemies. Remember, this is a zoom-in area. We saw it in the first level, in which you have to destroy as many stationary enemies as you can. The good thing about this section is that you don't die even if you touch the other ships or tanks or whatever it is shooting at you, which is a little bit of an advantage, if you will. So it's a sort of bonus stage. I mean, the more of those things you kill, the more points you get. That's the whole point. Remember, back in the day, being rich or getting a shield of score was the most relevant thing. Also, this game is very short. It has like 6 or 7 missions, I believe. I mean, there is another compensation thing that Sega took into account, I guess. Okay, let's make a fucking unforgiving game in which most of the time you have to use your lower missile that shoots a lot less often than the other one. But at the same time, let's make this short, right? Painful, but short. See, it is a lot easier when you avoid attacks and you have to kill sky enemies. But in here, look at the amount of tanks, and I have to kill all of them and avoid all of their missiles. And all of them are freaking fast. So that's the complicated thing. But in my opinion, I think I have done better than the practice gameplay I did off screen, of course. I was playing a little bit through this last week. I insist, in order to practice, in order not to suck that much. But still, I died a shitload of times. But in this one, I think I've done better, probably because I have been memorizing some of the patterns. And also, I'm doing commentary for this game. I usually don't do commentary anymore when doing arcade games. But now I'm doing commentary basically in order to compensate the shitty skills. I think I mentioned this already, but yeah, that's the whole point. The thing is going to explode. Wow, that was fast. I was able to avoid that. And okay, I didn't do that bad this time. That's good. Mission completed. Return to base. Oh, before I forget, I mentioned that game Ajax made by Konami. I did a gameplay video with commentary on my YouTube channel. That game came out a year before this, and that game did have the bomb option. So, just Sega didn't want to get it released, that's all. The explanation is not based on the fact the bomb feature didn't exist. I already mentioned this, yeah. 1942 had it, 1943 also had something similar. And Ajax 2. I'm trying to remember some other shooter that came out before this game, but they weren't that common. I think after 1988, 1989, those shooters became really repetitive, and probably most of arcade games were shooters. These kind of shooters, either vertical or horizontal, especially vertical. You know, and it became even more massified because of the bullet hells in Japan and all that. And that's how the two-hoo phenomenon started to, you know, become popular and all that. Yeah, the thing is that the two-hoos or bullet hells had something different from these shooters. But most of the bullets bosses shoot at you, for example, were slow. So you would be able to get a pattern at some point and get them all avoided. I mean, it's not really difficult to avoid all of those bullets in bullet hells if you practice, of course, if you are a 24/7 nerd who play those kind of games. The thing is, these ones do have a pattern, but the speed of the bullets, or these attacks, whatever they are a lot more complicated to avoid because of the speed they have, unlike bullet hells. And that was the boss, and I killed it very fast. This one didn't require the lower missile, that's why probably I did better. And people on the base are making the world nice at the very bottom, as you can see. Mission number 5, I'm getting close to the end, I'm certain. I think I described pretty much all the features of this game. You haven't been able to see those by yourself. The power-up system here freaking sucks, as you can see. I got the side ship and I got killed immediately. I think this is like the third time it happens to me. If you can go back on the video, you will notice that that happened before at least one more time. See, look at these missiles are really fast. And when you're trying to move to the sides, you're having, I don't know, a really bad time trying to move to the sides. And obviously you cannot get speed up items. I insist, that became a lot more common during the 90s. Alright, this is a bonus stage. Obviously I don't care about the points I could be eventually getting, but at least I can rest from dying for at least 10 seconds or so. Remember, if you get hit, basically nothing happens. 93%. Not bad at all. I think that this is the best I have done so far in those 3 base things I went through. That was stupid death. Oh shit. Backed up partners right there. So what now? More of these things, see? It's difficult to move to the sides. Well, of course, as you are destroying these things, you can do better, or it becomes easier. But I insist with this idea of the missiles not being very generous. I mean, without the cheat, this would be impossible. And I'm talking about all the cheats, not only rapid fire, but I'm talking also about infinite lives. Okay, this is another target, or group of targets that require a lower missile. It's obviously the boss. Thank God I'm using Keyor for this. It would be a lot more complicated with a joystick, or with a generic PlayStation controller even. Three more targets. Of course, the more targets you destroy, the easier it is to avoid all the missiles. The thing is, I destroy 3 targets at a time. That's good, I guess. Moving to mission 6. Breakthrough enemy's ultimate defense line. I think this is the last level. Open sea. Well, another element I noticed from this game. I think if you get to the very top, I guess, I mean, it depends on the enemy anyway. Yeah, they shoot at you. Yeah, they shoot at you. They don't have a specific pattern. They are following you. Okay. I was about to say if you get to the very top, they don't shoot at you from the bottom of the screen, but they do. So even if you try to stay up there, they're gonna be shooting at you anyway. So you're not safe. And of course, the only way to avoid all of these missiles is by destroying the ships. The thing is, there are so many of them. They're moving all the time. It's difficult to kill them all using these missiles, which are not very precise, and I keep complaining about the same thing again and again, but I guess you agree with me on this. Oh my god, this is brutal. How can you avoid all of this? Okay, that was better. I did better this time. But still, they keep appearing, shooting at you quickly. Damn. God damn. I don't know why I decided to play this. Probably for showing a game that nobody would play. You know, I am the king of the underrated games. I'm kind of proud of that. And this is, guys, the final boss. The first phase consists of electricity shocks, I believe, that stay there. You destroy those two weak points with the sky missiles, which makes this first part a little bit easier. But the second one have to be destroyed, of course, with the lower missiles. And at the same time, speaking of missiles, you have to avoid the ones that the enemy shoots. Oops, shooting something. See, I don't see the other missiles being shot. And he got killed again. Oops. It's difficult to tell when he's going to shoot those rings or whatever they are. I don't know. There we go. Okay, that took a while. Probably the bosses, even if you need to be very precise when shooting those lower missiles, they take very few hits in general. Probably I made a mistake setting the rapid fire for in this case. Probably you can do a lot better if you shoot missiles one by one. But as you can see, I beat the game. The heretical group's ambitious plan has now been crushed, and the world has returned to peace again. Their gallant deeds were revealed to the people, and story of their heroic actions was handed down from generation to generation. And that was Scramble Spirits on arcade, Sega game, Sega shooter released in '88. That was interesting. I think I did a lot better than previous attempts. I remember playing this. I already told you, sorry, last week in order to practice. But I did very good in general terms, trying to be humble on this, of course. But yeah, there you go. I hope you enjoyed this, and I apologize for the shitty skills, or if I complain too much about these unfair skills. And of course, as pretty much all arcade games, once you beat the game, you have to restart it. Even if they try to make you believe there is another story going on, like in some shooters happen, it's basically the same thing. So thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next project.